During a quiet Sunday dinner with my son and his wife, I got a scary text message from someone I didn't know. Leave right now. Don't tell your son why. I chose to listen to this strange message and learned something that made me shake with fear. 1 hour later, the police came to their house with handcuffs. You won't believe what happened next. Before we start, first let me thank you for watching Grandma Stories. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Sarah Smith, from Washington, D.C. Thank you for being part of our family. Now, let me tell you everything. The warm water felt good on my tired hands as I washed my favorite teacup with tiny roses on it. Same thing every night after eating alone. One small bowl, one spoon, one cup that showed I ate dinner by myself again. My kitchen felt too big without my husband humming his favorite songs while cooking, without him telling jokes that made me laugh until my belly hurt. I dried the cup very carefully and put it where it always went, like a special memory of happier days. My old refrigerator made quiet sounds. It had pictures stuck on it with colorful magnets. My eyes looked at the photo of Tommy when he finished school, 18 years old, smiling big in his cap and long dress, my arm hugging him tight. This was before we started fighting, before the money problems, before we stopped talking to each other. The telephone rang very loud and scared me. My wet hands tried to find a towel while the phone kept ringing and ringing. The phone felt cold when I picked it up. I looked at the little screen through my glasses to see who was calling. The number made me stop breathing for a second. Me. For a moment, I couldn't move at all. 2 whole years of not talking felt like a big ocean between us. The last time we talked, he left angry after I said no when he asked for money for his business idea. My husband would have known what to say. He always had the right words. Hello, I said, and my voice sounded rough and old. Mom, Tommy's voice sounded nervous like when he was little and broke something important and didn't know how much trouble he was in. It's me. I held the phone tighter and my heart beat very fast against my chest. Tommy, I wasn't thinking you would call. I know it's been. He stopped talking and I could hear him breathing hard. Too long. Way too long. I walked slowly to my soft chair, the one my husband bought because it helped my back feel better. The chair was worn smooth from years of watching TV and doing puzzles. How are you doing, sweetie? I'm doing great, really great. Jessica and I have been talking and we realized how much we miss you being around. How much we miss family. The word hung in the air like a bridge between us. Family. Something we used to be before pride and money and not talking built walls between us. I miss it too, I said, surprised that I told the truth so easily. Mom, would you like to come eat dinner with us tonight? Jessica is making that chicken soup you always loved and we could talk. Really talk like we used to. I stared at the family photo on my small table. Tommy, Jessica, my husband, and me at their wedding 3 years ago before everything went wrong. My husband always said, families always find their way back to each other if they wait long enough. Tonight. My voice showed how surprised I was. I know it's not much time to get ready, but Jessica already started cooking, and we just don't want to wait anymore. We've wasted too much time already. Something in his voice touched my heart. A scared feeling I remembered from when he was small and afraid of loud thunder. Maybe my husband had been right. Maybe families really could get better. What time should I come? I heard myself saying. 6:30. I'll send you our address. We moved to Riverside last summer. Riverside was where rich people lived, but Tommy always dreamed big. I'll be there, sweetie. His voice got softer. Thank you for giving us another chance, Mom. After I hung up, I sat as the room got darker, holding the family photo in my shaking hands. My husband smiled at me from the picture, and I could almost hear him whisper, "It's time, Helen. Time to go home." The quiet after hanging up felt different somehow. It felt hopeful instead of sad and empty. I put the family photo back on the table very carefully and got up from my chair with energy I hadn't felt in many months. Tonight would be different. Tonight I would have my son back. Upstairs, my bedroom felt like a place full of old memories. My husband's cologne bottle still sat on his dresser, with dust dancing in the afternoon light coming through pretty curtains. I opened my closet and looked past everyday shirts and old sweaters. My fingers found the blue dress hanging in a plastic bag. The soft fabric felt nice between my fingers, cotton blend that my husband had surprised me with for Tommy's graduation day. "You need something beautiful for special times," he had said, smoothing the dress with his gentle hands. "And our son graduating is very special." I carried the dress to the bed and took it out of the plastic slowly, remembering how proud I felt walking into that big room, my husband holding my arm, watching Tommy walk across the stage to get his diploma. The same dress had been worn to job meetings, anniversaries, and my husband's funeral. Tonight it would see another important moment. The shower's hot water made my tight muscles feel better. I didn't know I had been so tense. While I brushed my hair, I saw myself in the mirror looking back at me with hopeful eyes. When had I gotten so old? The lines around my eyes were deeper, and gray now covered most of my brown hair. Would Tommy notice? Would Jessica see how lonely I had become? My husband's aftershave sat on the bathroom counter where I left it after he died. Old Spice, his Christmas gift to himself every year. I touched the bottle quickly, then reached for my own perfume. Some memories were too special to borrow from. Dressed and ready, I looked at myself one last time. The dress still fit well, though maybe a little loose now. I picked a bottle of homemade jam from my kitchen cabinet. A peace gift, something to help connect our past hurts with future hopes. My phone buzzed with Tommy's message. 842 Oak Street, Riverside. "Can't wait to see you, Mom." I called for a taxi, my fingers shaking as I typed the address. Riverside was 1 hour away, a different world from my small neighborhood. The app said the car would come in 10 minutes. Standing by my front window, I watched houses I knew well fade into evening shadows. Mrs. Peterson from across the street waved from her porch, and I waved back, feeling happier than I had in months. Maybe tonight would change everything. Maybe family really could find its way home. The taxi came right on time, a clean car with a nice driver who talked about the good weather. As we drove away from my street, as my neighborhood turned into highways, and highways turned into fancy neighborhoods, I watched the world change outside my window. Houses got bigger, grass got greener, driveways got wider. By the time we got to the rich area, I was looking at huge houses that could hold 6 families like mine. "Riverside is a really nice place," the driver said, seeing my surprised face. "Lot of successful people live here." "I'm visiting my son," I said, feeling proud but confused about how Tommy could buy such an expensive house. Lucky lady having family in a place like this. Lucky indeed, I thought, though worry crept into my excitement. How exactly had Tommy been able to buy a house where only very rich people lived? The taxi stopped in front of a house that looked like it belonged in magazines about beautiful homes. I sat frozen in the back seat, staring up at white columns and perfectly cut bushes that probably cost more than I spent on food each month. A curved driveway went around a fancy water fountain where water danced in the early evening light. 2 expensive cars, a Mercedes and a BMW, sat parked like shiny signs of success. "This is it, ma'am," the driver said happily. "Beautiful place." I fumbled with my purse, hands shaking as I counted out money and gave him extra for being nice. "Thank you. Have a good evening." The car door felt heavy as I stepped onto perfect pavement. My shoes, clean but old, clicked against stone as I walked the curved path toward a front door that looked like it belonged to a fancy hotel. Perfectly trimmed bushes lined the walkway, and lights that turned on by themselves lit up my path like a movie scene. Before I could reach for the gold doorbell, the big wooden door opened wide. A middle-aged woman with kind eyes and graying hair stood there. She wore a black dress that screamed professional housekeeper. Her smile seemed real, but something flickered behind her eyes. Worry warning. The look disappeared so fast, I wondered if I imagined it. "Mrs. Wilson," she said warmly, stepping aside to let me into a front hall that made my whole living room look tiny. "Rosa. Mr. Tommy and Miss Jessica are so excited you're here." The inside took my breath away. Shiny floors stretched toward curved stairs that belonged in movies about rich people. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling, casting warm light over paintings that looked original and expensive. Fresh flowers, real ones, not fake ones like I used, filled the air with sweet smell. "Mom," Tommy's voice came from somewhere deeper in the house, footsteps echoing as he walked toward me. He appeared in the front hall looking like a movie star. Expensive suit, perfect haircut, teeth that definitely hadn't been that white when he graduated. When he hugged me, it felt desperate, lasting longer than normal hugs. "You look amazing," he said, stepping back to look at me with eyes that seemed both grateful and worried. "Really amazing." Jessica appeared beside him like a graceful princess in a silk dress that probably cost more than my car. Her makeup was perfect. Her jewelry was subtle but clearly expensive. Her smile was so perfect it felt practiced. "Helen," she swept forward to kiss my cheek, surrounding me with expensive perfume. "You look wonderful. We're so happy you're here." I managed a smile, still shocked by all the fancy things around us. "This place is incredible." "How do you afford real estate?" Tommy interrupted quickly, his laugh a little too bright. "Caught the market at exactly the right time. Lucky timing mostly." Something about his voice made me pause, but Jessica was already taking my arm with practiced grace. "Come, let's get you comfortable. Rosa, could you take Mrs. Wilson's coat?" I handed over my jacket, my best one, though it suddenly felt shabby in these surroundings. Rosa took it with another of those kind but troubled smiles, disappearing toward what I guessed was a coat closet big enough to house a small family. "I brought this," I said, offering the jam jar I had picked so carefully. "Thought we could share something homemade." Tommy's face lit up as he looked at the label. "Mom, this is fantastic. You shouldn't have, but I'm glad you did." He patted my shoulder with enthusiasm that felt slightly forced. "Jessica's been cooking all afternoon. She remembered how much you love chicken soup." How did Jessica remember my food preferences? We had shared maybe 2 meals together in 3 years, and I couldn't remember chicken soup being something we talked about. But her smile was so warm, so welcoming that I pushed the thought away. "You're too kind," I told her, meaning it despite my confusion. "Family takes care of family," she replied smoothly, linking her arm through mine. "That's what matters most." Tommy led us toward what I guessed was the dining room, walking confidently, but something tight around his eyes. Rosa had disappeared somewhere into the house's depths, leaving us in this perfect picture of family reunion. As we walked through rooms that belonged in decorating magazines, I tried to understand how this obvious wealth matched the son who had asked me for money just 2 years ago. The dining room opened before us like something from a fancy movie. Dark wood table set for 3 with dishes that caught the light from a hanging crystal chandelier. Silver gleamed against white cloth, and the smell of cooking chicken soup drifted from somewhere beyond swinging doors. That probably led to a kitchen bigger than my apartment. "This is beautiful," I breathed, genuinely amazed. Jessica beamed at the compliment. "We want tonight to be special. We want to start over, Helen. All of us." As Tommy pulled out my chair with the practiced ease of someone used to fancy dining, I found myself hoping my husband could see this moment. His boy had made something of himself, found success beyond our modest dreams. Maybe he would be proud of how Tommy had turned out. Maybe he would approve of this chance at making up I was about to take. The dining room welcomed us like a scene from a rich person's magazine. Glass cups caught the chandelier's warm light, making tiny rainbows across starched white cloth. Silver gleamed against bone dishes that probably cost more than I spent on groceries each month. Each place setting looked like artwork. Multiple forks arranged perfectly. Cloth napkins folded into perfect triangles. "This is incredible," I breathed, running my fingers along the darkwood table's polished edge. Tommy beamed as he pulled out my chair at the head of the table. "Only the best for family reunions, right, Mom?" Jessica settled gracefully to my left, while Tommy took the seat to my right. The arrangement felt planned. Both of them positioned where they could watch my every reaction and guide every conversation. Rosa appeared silently from what I assumed was the kitchen, carrying delicate appetizers arranged like tiny sculptures. "Let's start with some wine," Tommy announced, already opening a bottle that looked expensive. The red liquid caught the light as he poured generous amounts into heavy crystal glasses. "This calls for a proper toast." He handed me a glass filled higher than I would have poured for myself. The wine's warmth spread through my chest as Jessica raised her glass with theatrical grace. To family, she said, her smile bright, to forgiveness and fresh starts. To Dad, Tommy added, his voice catching slightly. He would have wanted us together like this. The wine tasted sweet as we drank. My husband always said alcohol made people talk more and feel more emotional. Tonight, surrounded by such obvious wealth, I found myself wondering what he would think of this fancy display. Tell us about the bakery. Jessica leaned forward with seeming real interest. Tommy says you built something amazing from nothing. Amazing is too big a word. I took another sip, feeling unusually relaxed. Just hard work and believing in people. My husband always said treat workers like family, customers like friends. Don't be modest, Mom. Tommy refilled my glass before I noticed it was empty. 4 locations now. That's impressive by any measure. He had been keeping track, even during our silence. Something warm grew in my chest. Maybe he had cared more than I realized. Rosa served the soup course efficiently, though I noticed her hand shaking slightly as she placed the bowl before me. Rich chicken soup in delicate bowls. Another reminder of how far we had traveled from my simple kitchen. Do you ever think about retiring? Jessica asked casually, cutting her bread with careful precision, slowing down a bit. The bakeries keep me busy. It's what my husband and I built together. I found myself drinking more freely than usual. The combination of good company and fine wine loosening thoughts I had kept to myself for months. Every location has his fingerprints on it. Tommy and Jessica exchanged a glance I pretended not to notice. They seemed to talk without words, like couples do after years together. Jessica's hand found mine briefly, her fingers cool against my skin. But you can't work forever, Tommy pressed gently. Have you thought about succession planning, legal arrangements for the future? The question felt oddly specific, but the wine made everything seem harmless. One day at a time, sweetie. One day at a time. Rosa appeared with the main course, chicken soup that smelled exactly like my husband's recipe. How had Jessica known? We had shared so few meals together over the years. This is perfect, I told her truthfully. Exactly like my husband used to make. Jessica's smile looked painted on. I wanted tonight to be special, to remind you that family takes care of family. As we ate, Tommy told me stories about his real estate business, though his explanations stayed frustratingly unclear. Jessica asked pointed questions about bakery operations, profit margins, property values. Their curiosity felt intense, almost professional. The room grew warmer as evening went on. My head felt lighter than it should have after just 2 glasses of wine. Rich food, good company, and the relief of making up, I told myself. Nothing more than that. Tommy checked his watch when he thought I wasn't looking. Jessica watched my drinking like a bartender tracking a regular customer. Rosa moved between kitchen and dining room with nervous energy, dropping a spoon that clattered against marble floors. Something bothered me at the edge of my thoughts, but the wine made thinking difficult. Everything felt slightly unreal, like watching myself from outside my body. When had I become such a lightweight? Reaching into my purse for my phone. The grand opening last month. My husband would have been so proud of how the community welcomed us. My phone buzzed against my palm just as I started to pull it out. The vibration startled me mid-sentence. Sorry, I mumbled, looking apologetically at Tommy and Jessica. Probably just the night manager with some routine question. But the number on my screen belonged to no one I knew. A local area code, but completely strange digits. I frowned, thumb hovering over the notification. Bakery emergencies came from numbers I knew. Miguel from the downtown location, Sarah from the mall spot, Tony from our newest Riverside venture. The phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. Everything all right? Tommy asked, leaning forward with what seemed like too much concern. Just unknown number. I shielded the screen partially with my napkin, driven by an instinct I couldn't explain. The text message appeared in stark capital letters. Stand up and leave now. Say nothing to your son. My blood turned cold. The elegant dining room suddenly felt like it was spinning, though I couldn't tell if that was shock or the wine making my head swim. I read the message again, certain I had misunderstood. Same words, same urgent command. Jessica's voice seemed to come from far away. You look pale. Are you feeling all right? I forced my face into what I hoped looked normal, slipping the phone back into my purse with hands that shook more than they should. Fine, just rich food hitting me harder than expected. But I wasn't fine. Someone unknown had my private number, knew where I was, felt they needed to warn me about what? About Tommy. About this perfect evening that suddenly felt like an elaborate stage show. The wine glass in my hand caught the chandelier light, red liquid swirling as my fingers shook slightly. When had I become this dizzy? 2 glasses shouldn't affect me this strongly. Not with a full meal. Maybe some water, Jessica suggested smoothly, already signaling Rosa. Tommy studied my face with sharp attention. You sure you're okay? You went completely white there for a second. I'm sure. The lie came easier than it should have. Just need to excuse me for a moment. Bathroom. Course. Tommy pointed toward the hallway. First door on the right. We'll wait for you. Rosa's bringing dessert. I stood carefully, testing my balance. The room swayed slightly, but I managed to walk normally toward the hallway. Behind me, Tommy and Jessica's voices continued in low, concerned tones. The hallway stretched before me, lined with expensive artwork and subtle lighting. First door on the right led to what I assumed was a powder room. But instead of turning right, something made me continue straight toward what looked like a kitchen entrance. The anonymous message burned in my memory. Whoever sent it knew something I didn't. Someone felt I was in enough danger to risk exposure by warning a complete stranger. Rosa stood at an enormous sink, washing crystal glasses with careful precision. Her back was toward me, but she didn't acknowledge my presence, even though my footsteps must have been audible on the marble floors. She continued her work as if I were invisible. The kitchen's back door stood just beyond her, leading to what looked like a garden. Freedom, fresh air, space to think clearly away from Tommy and Jessica's watchful eyes. I moved quietly past Rosa, expecting her to turn to question my presence, to alert my hosts. She never looked up from her washing, though her shoulders tensed slightly as I passed. The door opened silently onto a perfectly manicured lawn that could have belonged to a fancy hotel. Motion sensors lit up my path across perfectly trimmed grass toward a gate in the property's back fence. My phone felt heavy in my purse, carrying its mysterious warning like a ticking bomb. Street lamps beyond the fence promised anonymity, distance from whatever danger had prompted that urgent message. I walked faster, my dress shoes slipping slightly on dewy grass, not caring about stains or appearances anymore. The gate opened onto a quiet residential street lined with mansions that probably housed millionaires and their secrets. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers, opened my ride-sharing app, and requested pickup 1 block away from Tommy's address. 7 minutes until arrival. 7 minutes to decide whether I was being paranoid or protecting myself from something real. The phone in my hand felt like evidence of conspiracy or paranoia. I couldn't tell which, but that message, those urgent capital letters, had triggered every survival instinct my husband's practical wisdom had ever taught me. When someone warns you about danger, he had always said, listen first and ask questions later. The taxi's headlights appeared at the end of the block, cutting through suburban darkness like a lifeline. I climbed into the back seat, gave the driver my address, and immediately dialed the number that had shattered my evening. It rang twice before a voice answered. Careful, anonymous, deliberately neutral. I hoped you would call this number. Who is this? My voice came out rougher than intended. Why did you warn me? I cannot reveal myself, but you were in immediate danger tonight. That's impossible. I was having dinner with my son. Pause that stretched too long. Then, your son owes $1.8 million to people who hurt others when payment is late. The taxi driver glanced in his rearview mirror as we merged into traffic, probably wondering why his passenger had gone completely silent mid-conversation. I gripped the phone tighter, The anonymous voice's words echoing in my head like hammer blows. That's impossible, I repeated, though my voice lacked conviction. Tommy owns real estate. He lives in a mansion. Borrowed against everything to fund gambling debts, underground casinos, high-stakes poker, sports betting with organized loan sharks. The voice remained calm, methodical. 3 weeks to pay or face serious physical consequences. My free hand found the door handle instinctively, as if I could escape this information by fleeing the moving car. Through the window, expensive riverside neighborhoods blurred past, perfect lawns hiding imperfect secrets. Even if that were true, I said slowly, what does it have to do with warning me away from dinner? The wine you brought contained Rohypnol. It multiplies alcohol effects by a factor of 10, making you extremely suggestible to manipulation. The words hit like a physical blow. The unusual dizziness, the way 2 glasses had affected me like 20. My increasing willingness to discuss business details I normally kept private. I stopped, remembering Tommy's eager excitement about the wine, Jessica's careful monitoring of my consumption, their coordinated refilling of my glass before I noticed it emptying. Legal documents were prepared in advance. The voice continued relentlessly. Complete transfer of your bakery properties and business assets. Power of attorney granting your son full control. The only missing element was your signature. The taxi driver kept his eyes on the road, professionally ignoring his passengers' obvious distress. I stared out at suburban streets that looked suddenly sinister, every well-lit window potentially concealing similar betrayals. How do you know all this? That doesn't matter. What matters is that you escaped before signing anything. Rohypnol combined with alcohol can cause memory gaps, making it easy to claim you willingly transferred everything. I thought about Tommy's nervous energy, Jessica's rehearsed warmth, their pointed questions about succession planning and retirement. The evening replayed in my memory with horrifying new context. Every toast, every refilled glass, every strategic touch designed to lower my guard. My son wouldn't, but the protest died in my throat. The boy who had once asked me to read him bedtime stories had grown into a man desperate enough to drug his own mother. The loan sharks gave him 3 weeks. That deadline is in 18 days. Why are you helping me? Asked finally. Because what they planned was wrong. Because you deserve to know the truth about people you trust. The anonymous caller knew details no stranger should possess. Debt amounts, drug names, illegal document specifics. Someone with intimate access to Tommy and Jessica's conspiracy. Who are you really? Someone who sees more than people realize. Someone who couldn't stand by and watch an innocent woman be destroyed by family greed. Rosa. The realization hit me like lightning. Her nervous efficiency during dinner. The way she had avoided eye contact. Her deliberate non-reaction when I had passed through the kitchen. She had known about the plan and chosen conscience over employment security. Thank you, I said quietly. Don't thank me yet. They'll realize you're gone soon. Tommy is desperate enough to try again, possibly with more dangerous methods. The taxi continued toward my neighborhood, each mile increasing the distance between me and the son I thought I knew. My phone showed 5 missed calls from Tommy's number, probably wondering what was taking so long in the bathroom. What should I do? Protect yourself. Change locks. Inform your lawyers. Move financial assets to accounts Tommy can't access. He knows your business inside and out. Every vulnerability, every routine. The driver caught my eye in the mirror. We're about halfway home, ma'am. You doing all right back there? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Through the phone, I could hear the anonymous caller breathing steadily, waiting for my next question. Will you testify if this goes to court? I can't, but the truth has a way of surfacing when people dig deep enough. 5 more missed calls appeared on my screen. Tommy's panic would be growing as bathroom minutes stretched into an obvious absence. Soon he would realize I had fled deliberately, and desperation would make him dangerous. Be very careful, the voice warned. Desperate people make desperate choices. Your son has 18 days to find $1.8 million or face consequences worse than bankruptcy. The call ended, leaving me alone with the taxi driver's soft music and the weight of complete family destruction. In one evening, I had gained a son and lost him again. Learned the price of trust and the cost of naivety. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy. "Mom, where are you? We're worried sick." I stared at the message, then deleted it without responding. The man who had sent those words had planned to drug me unconscious and steal everything my husband and I had built together. The taxi driver cleared his throat gently. "Ma'am, we're approaching downtown. Still want to go to the original address?" I looked out at the city lights reflecting off dark water, then back at my phone showing the route to Riverside, still available in my GPS. Safety lay ahead in my neighborhood, but confrontation waited behind in Riverside. For the first time in my life, I had to choose between protecting myself and protecting what remained of my family. My neighborhood's familiar streets beckoned through the taxi's windshield, promising safety in the comfort of my worn armchair, where my husband's memory lived in every thread. But safety felt like cowardice now, knowing what Tommy was capable of doing to others. When desperation struck again, I pulled my husband's wedding photo from my purse, edges soft from years of handling, his smile as bright as the day we had promised to build something meaningful together. He would never back down from difficult conversations, never chose comfort over doing what was right. "He wouldn't run," I whispered to his image. The driver caught my eye in the rearview mirror. "Everything all right back there, ma'am?" "Actually, no." I straightened in my seat, decision crystallizing like steel in my chest. "I need to make a phone call. Then we're changing destination." My fingers shook as I dialed 911. 2 rings, then a professional voice. "Emergency services." "What's your emergency?" "My family is attempting to poison me for money." The words sounded unreal spoken aloud, like lines from a television drama. "I have evidence, and they're still at the location with prepared legal documents." "Ma'am, are you in immediate danger?" "Not right now, but I need officers at 842 Oak Street, Riverside." "I'm returning there to gather evidence." The dispatcher's questions came rapid fire. Nature of poisoning, number of suspects, weapons present. I answered methodically, my business training taking over. Clear facts, specific details, actionable information. "Officers are en route. Estimated arrival 25 minutes. Ma'am, I strongly advise you not to return to that location until I understand the risk." My husband's photo stared up at me, his eyes holding that expression he wore when I needed to be braver than I felt. "But if I don't go back, they'll destroy evidence and try this again with someone else." After disconnecting, I leaned forward toward the driver. "Change of plans. We're going back to Riverside." "Ma'am, you seem really upset. Maybe you should think about this." "This isn't a rash decision." I met his eyes in the mirror. "Sometimes you have to choose between being safe and doing what's right." The return journey felt different from our earlier drive. Street lights illuminated determination instead of confusion, purpose instead of hurt. Each mile brought me closer to confronting the son I had raised, the family I had trusted, the future I would have to rebuild from scratch. My husband's voice seemed to whisper from the photograph. "Family means telling the truth, even when it hurts." 25 minutes later, we turned onto Oak Street. Police cars approached from the opposite direction, lights off, but unmistakably official. My heart hammered against my ribs as I realized this was really happening. I was about to destroy my family to save myself and possibly others. "Wait around the corner," I told the driver. "This might take a while." Walking up the curved driveway felt like approaching an execution. The mansion's perfect exterior concealed such calculated evil, such desperate betrayal. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorbell. Time to face my son. The doorbell's chimes echoed through the mansion like a funeral bell. Footsteps approached quickly, too quickly for casual concern. Tommy yanked the door open, relief and suspicion warring across his features. "Mom, where have you been?" His smile looked painted on. "We were getting worried sick." "Hurry, sweetie." I forced my voice into apologetic tones. I needed some fresh air. Felt dizzy after all that rich food. "Dizzy?" His eyes sharpened. You were gone for almost 40 minutes. Time got away from me. Beautiful neighborhood you have here. I walked further than I meant to. Jessica appeared behind Tommy, her designer dress wrinkled from nervous pacing. Her perfect hostess mask slipped for just a moment, revealing raw panic underneath. Helen, you gave us such a scare. She reached for my arm with fingers that trembled slightly. Are you feeling better now? Much better, thank you. I allowed her to guide me back inside, noting how her grip lingered too long, too tight. Just needed to clear my head. The foyer felt smaller now, oppressive rather than impressive. Every expensive detail reminded me of the blood money that had purchased this illusion of success. Perhaps you had too much wine with dinner. Jessica's laugh sounded brittle. Let's get you some water. And actually, I think I'd like to sit down again. I moved deliberately toward the dining room. That's all right. Tommy and Jessica exchanged a glance laden with meaning I was supposed to miss. Their coordinated response felt rehearsed, like actors who had forgotten their lines. Course, Mom. Whatever you need. The dining room had been hastily reorganized during my absence. Papers that might have been scattered across the table were nowhere to be seen. Rosa moved efficiently between kitchen and dining room, her nervous energy more pronounced than before. I settled back into my chair at the head of the table, noting how Tommy and Jessica flanked me exactly as before. The crystal glasses had been cleared, the dinner plates stacked, but the atmosphere crackled with unspoken tension. I hope you don't mind, Jessica said carefully, but we cleaned up a bit. Didn't want to leave Rosa with too much work. Very considerate, I smiled blandly, wondering what evidence they had hidden while I was gone. Tommy drummed his fingers against the dark wood table, a nervous habit from childhood that betrayed his anxiety now. So, Mom, feeling completely recovered. No more dizziness or confusion. The question carried undertones I pretended not to hear. Clear as a bell, sweetie. That fresh air worked wonders. Jessica leaned forward with calculated concern. You know, rich meals can affect people differently as we get older. Perhaps next time we should plan something lighter. Next time. As if there would be one after tonight. I've always had a strong stomach, I replied evenly. Takes more than good food and wine to slow me down. Rosa appeared with fresh water glasses, her movements sharp and efficient. When she placed mine before me, her fingers brushed the table edge in what might have been an accidental tremor. Tommy checked his watch, a gesture so subtle I almost missed it. Whatever timeline they were working against was growing shorter. Well, he said with forced brightness, since you're feeling better, maybe we could continue our evening. I know Jessica was looking forward to more conversation. Absolutely. Jessica's smile could have powered the chandelier. We have so much catching up to do, but something had shifted during my absence. Their desperation was showing through the cracks in their performance, and I could sense the evening building toward a crescendo. Tommy stood suddenly and moved toward the liquor cabinet. Mom, let's have one more toast before the evening ends. Tommy's hands trembled almost imperceptibly as he measured wine into fresh crystal glasses. I watched him work, noting how he lingered over my glass, adding extra liquid that caught the light differently than the red wine. You know, I began casually, I want to tell you about the day you were born, Tommy. His shoulders tensed slightly. Mom, that's sweet, but maybe we should toast first. This wine is too good to let it get warm. This is important, sweetie. I settled back in my chair, hands folded peacefully. Your father was so nervous for 12 hours. Longest day of my life. Jessica leaned forward with forced enthusiasm. Helen, the wine will lose its flavor if we wait too long. Can't we drink and listen at the same time? Patience, dear. Some stories can't be rushed. I watched Tommy carry the glasses toward our table, noting the slight sediment swirling in mine when it caught the chandelier light. Where was I? Oh yes, your father was convinced something was wrong because I was in labor so long. Tommy set my glass down carefully, ensuring I could see the generous portion he had poured. His own glass contained significantly less, crystal clear, without any unusual particles. The doctor kept telling us everything was normal. I continued, lifting my glass as if to examine the wine's color. But your father had instincts about these things. He always knew when something wasn't quite right. Fascinating, Jessica interrupted, her smile growing strained. But surely that toast is getting warm. Family stories are so much better with good wine. I swirled my glass gently, watching foreign particles dance in the red liquid. Rohypnol, according to my anonymous caller. Enough to make me compliant, suggestible, vulnerable to signing away everything my husband and I had built together. You're absolutely right about savoring good wine, I agreed, bringing the glass closer to my lips without drinking. Your father always said patience makes everything taste better. Tommy's eye twitched. Mom, you've been talking for 10 minutes. The wine really is getting warm. Time flies when you're sharing memories. I gestured expansively with my glass, using the motion to avoid actually drinking. Did I mention how tiny you were? Just 5 pounds, but you had the strongest grip I'd ever felt. Jessica stood abruptly and moved behind my chair, her hands settling on my shoulders with practiced intimacy. Helen, you're such a wonderful storyteller. Why don't we toast to Tommy's birth? Then you can continue. Her fingers pressed against my shoulders with increasing insistence. I could feel her desperation through her touch. The plan was falling apart, and they knew it. Your father said you'd be stubborn from day one, I continued, pretending not to notice Jessica's pressure. He was right, wasn't he? Once you set your mind on something, nothing could stop you. Tommy's composure cracked slightly. Mom, please, just one sip, then tell us about Dad. The thing about stubbornness, I mused, still holding my untouched glass, is that it can be a virtue or a vice. Your father always worried about which way you'd choose. The room fell silent, except for the soft sound of Rosa washing dishes in the kitchen. Tommy and Jessica stared at me with barely concealed frustration, their perfect plan unraveling with each passing minute. I think, I said slowly, your father would be heartbroken to see what choices you've made. Tommy's face went white. What do you mean by that? Before I could answer, 3 sharp knocks echoed from the front door. Authoritative, unmistakable. Police, open the door. Tommy's glass slipped from his fingers, shattering against the marble floor as his face drained of all color. The metallic click of handcuffs cut through the dining room's stunned silence like a judge's gavel. Tommy stood frozen, his face the color of old paper, as the senior officer stepped forward with practiced authority. Thomas Wilson, you're under arrest for attempted poisoning, conspiracy to commit fraud, and elder abuse. The officer's voice carried the weight of years spent dealing with family betrayals. You have the right to remain silent. This is insane, Tommy's voice cracked like a teenager's. Officer, this is just a misunderstanding. My mother is confused. Mom, please. Jessica's hysteria built like a kettle reaching boil. Tell them this is all some terrible mistake. I stood slowly, the untouched glass of poisoned wine still in my hand. The sediment swirled like guilty secrets in red liquid. There's no mistake. This glass contains Rohypnol. My son added it to make me sign business transfer documents. The junior officer accepted the glass with latex gloves, holding it up to the chandelier light. The foreign particles were clearly visible, undeniable evidence of calculated betrayal. Ma'am, attempted poisoning carries 10 to 15 years minimum sentence, the senior officer informed Tommy as the handcuffs clicked into place. Conspiracy and elder abuse add additional time. Tommy's knees buckled slightly. 15 years, but the loan sharks, they'll kill me if I don't pay in 18 days. Jessica's face drained of color. Tommy, shut up. Don't say anything else. But Tommy was beyond strategic thinking. Mom, you don't understand. They threatened to break my legs, then kill me. I had no choice. You had choices, I replied quietly. You chose gambling over family. You chose crime over honest work. You chose to poison your own mother rather than face consequences. The officers exchanged glances. They had heard desperate justifications before, but attempted matricide for gambling debts registered as particularly disturbing. Jessica Wilson, the junior officer announced, you're also under arrest as a co-conspirator. No, Jessica's perfectly manicured fingernails clawed at the table edge. I didn't plan anything. Tommy forced me to help. I'm a victim too. The senior officer's expression suggested he had heard that defense many times. Ma'am, evidence shows you researched the victim's preferences and participated in the drugging plan. As they led Tommy and Jessica toward the front door, Tommy turned back with eyes that held one last desperate manipulation attempt. Mom, how could you do this to your own family? Dad would be heartbroken. Your father valued honesty above comfort, I answered firmly. He would never forgive what you tried to do tonight. Rosa appeared from the kitchen, her professional mask finally slipping to reveal satisfaction mixed with sadness. She had witnessed justice served, but understood the human cost. The mansion fell silent, except for the distant sound of car doors slamming and engines starting. Blue and red lights painted the expensive walls in colors of consequence as the police vehicles disappeared into the night. Standing alone in the dining room where my family had tried to destroy me, I felt my husband's presence like a warm hand on my shoulder. He would have made the same choice. The expensive crystal lay shattered on marble floors, the poisoned wine spreading like spilled blood. Evidence of how close I had come to losing everything I had worked to build. My phone buzzed with a text from the senior officer. Station processing will take 3 to 4 hours. We'll need your formal statement. Time to complete what I had started. Time to ensure justice was properly served. The Riverside Police Station buzzed with late evening activity. Drunk driving arrests, domestic disturbances, and now my family's conspiracy case. Tommy and Jessica sat in separate holding cells, their designer clothes looking absurd against institutional gray walls. Through reinforced glass, I watched Tommy pace his cell like a caged animal. Every few minutes he would glance toward where I sat giving my statement, his expression cycling between fury and desperate pleading. Mrs. Wilson, Detective Martinez set down her coffee with deliberate precision. Walk me through the Rohypnol again. How did you know what to look for? Anonymous tip, I replied honestly. Someone called warning me about the plan. They knew specific details about the drug and its effects. Any idea who this person might be? I thought about Rosa's nervous efficiency during dinner, her careful positioning to observe without seeming to watch. No idea, but whoever it was saved my life. Jessica's sobs echoed from the women's holding area through the station's chaos. Her hysteria stood out like a siren. This is all Tommy's fault, her voice carried. I just went along because I was scared. Detective Martinez raised an eyebrow. Fear doesn't typically excuse conspiracy to commit elder abuse and fraud. We found the prepared legal documents in Mr. Tommy's office. Power of attorney, business transfers, the whole package. How long will they serve? Attempted poisoning alone. 10 to 15 years. Add conspiracy, elder abuse, and fraud. Tommy's looking at 18 to 25. Jessica might get less if she cooperates, but she's still facing serious time. The numbers felt surreal. My son would spend his 40s in prison because he couldn't accept responsibility for his gambling addiction. The loan sharks he mentioned, Detective Martinez continued, will need details about those threats. Might help explain his desperation, though it won't excuse attempted murder. Through the window, I could see Tommy slumped on his cell's narrow bench, head in his hands. 25 years of my life raising him, teaching him right from wrong, building a legacy he could inherit, all destroyed by his inability to face consequences like an adult. Mom. His voice suddenly boomed through the station as he spotted me through the glass. Please, I'll pay it all back. I'll go to treatment. Change. The same promises he had made during our last argument about money. The same manipulation that had worked when he was younger, and I was more naive about enabling destructive behavior. Mrs. Wilson, Detective Martinez observed my son's outburst. He's going to keep trying to manipulate you. Standard pattern with family financial crimes. No. His father always said I was too soft with him. Maybe if I had been stronger earlier. Not your fault, ma'am. Adult children make their own choices. Jessica appeared at her cell window, makeup streaked down her cheeks like war paint. Helen, please talk to them. Tell them I was coerced. I never wanted to hurt you. Her desperation felt familiar. The same tone Tommy had used when caught in childhood lies. Neither of them accepted responsibility. Both blamed circumstances beyond their control. "Detective, I need to ask you something important." I leaned forward, decision crystallizing. The anonymous person who warned me. They risked everything to save a stranger. If I knew who they were, I'd want to help them. Understood. If they come forward, we'll make sure their cooperation is noted. The station's fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows that revealed truth without flattery. My family's perfect facade had crumbled completely, exposing the desperate criminality underneath. 4 hours later, paperwork complete and formal statements recorded, I stood in the station lobby. The officer approached with car keys. "Ready to go home, Mrs. Wilson. We'll drive you back to your neighborhood." I pulled out my phone, staring at the number that had saved my life. "Actually, I need to make one call first, to thank someone who deserves to know how this ended." The phone rang twice before a familiar voice answered, no longer disguised by fear, but warm with genuine concern. "This is Rosa Martinez. How are you, Mrs. Wilson?" "Rosa." Relief flooded through me like warm sunlight. "You were right there the whole time. You saw everything and still found the courage to save me. I couldn't let them hurt you. You treated me with kindness when your son and his wife treated me like furniture." Sitting in the police station lobby at nearly midnight, I found myself crying for the first time since my husband's funeral. Not from pain, but from overwhelming gratitude for this woman's moral courage. "Rosa, how did you know about the Rohypnol, the documents, all of it?" 4 days ago, I was cleaning Mr. Tommy's office when I heard them planning. They spoke as if I wasn't human, like I couldn't understand English or wouldn't matter if I did. The casual cruelty struck me harder than the attempted poisoning. My son had become someone who dismissed human dignity based on job titles and immigration status. They discussed everything: the drug, how much to use, where to hide the papers. Miss Jessica researched your favorite foods, your business routines, everything needed to manipulate you. You risked your job, possibly deportation, to warn a stranger. Not a stranger, her voice softened, a good woman who reminded me of my mother, someone who said please and thank you and actually looked at me when speaking. The police officer gestured that my ride was ready, but this conversation mattered more than convenience. "Rosa, I need to ask you something important. Do you have another job lined up?" "No, ma'am. After tonight, I doubt I'll get references from the Wilsons. I own 4 bakeries in town. I need a manager for my newest location. Someone I can trust completely, someone with your moral character and judgment." Silence stretched across the phone connection. When Rosa spoke again, her voice trembled with emotion. "Mrs. Wilson, you don't have to. This isn't charity. I need employees who do the right thing when no one's watching. You proved tonight that you're exactly that person. The salary would be $55,000 to start, health benefits, profit sharing after 1 year. Plus all the job training you need to advance in bakery management." Rosa's sob was audible through the phone. "Ma'am, I don't know what to say. Say you'll start Monday morning, 9 o'clock at the downtown location. I'll be there to personally train you." The police officer waited patiently while I completed arrangements with Rosa. Address exchange, start date confirmation, promise of work visa assistance if needed. When I finally hung up, I felt lighter than I had in months. The ride back to my neighborhood passed in comfortable silence. Street lights illuminated familiar areas where honesty still mattered more than wealth, where people worked hard without expecting others to fund their mistakes. My modest house welcomed me like an old friend. Inside, family photos covered the refrigerator. Tommy at various ages, Jessica at their wedding, my husband smiling from better times. I removed Tommy's photo carefully, not destroying it, but placing it in a kitchen drawer. Some memories deserved preservation, but not daily visibility. Jessica's wedding picture followed. My husband's photo remained on the refrigerator. His smile approving of justice served and new friendships earned through moral courage. On my calendar I wrote Rosa, 9 a.m. Monday, in the space reserved for important appointments. Below that, new beginning. Outside, my neighborhood hummed with honest late-night activity. Night shift workers heading home, early shift workers starting their day, people who understood that integrity couldn't be purchased with borrowed money or stolen through family manipulation. My husband would have loved Rosa's story. He always said the best employees were those who did right things for right reasons, regardless of personal cost. My phone buzzed with a final text from Detective Martinez. Both suspects formally charged. Trials scheduled for September. Your testimony will be crucial. I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, finally ready to sleep peacefully. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but tonight justice had been served by good people making difficult choices. In my bedroom, my husband's aftershave still sat on the dresser, a reminder that love means protecting people from harm, even when that harm comes from family, especially when it comes from family. The next morning brought sunshine through my bedroom windows and the sound of my phone ringing. Mrs. Wilson, this is Detective Martinez. I wanted to update you on your case. Good morning, Detective. What's the news? Both suspects have been formally charged. Tommy Wilson faces 20 to 25 years. Jessica Wilson faces 15 to 20. Their assets are being seized to pay restitution to creditors. The house, the cars, everything will be sold at auction. I felt no satisfaction, only sadness for what my family had become. What about the loan sharks? We're investigating those threats. If they're real, we'll pursue those cases as well. But your son's gambling debts aren't your responsibility, ma'am. I know, I said quietly. I learned that the hard way. After hanging up, I made coffee in my small kitchen and sat at my table where my husband and I had shared thousands of meals. The morning felt different somehow. Cleaner. Like a storm had passed and left clear skies behind. At 9 o'clock sharp, I drove to my downtown bakery to meet Rosa. She stood waiting by the front door, dressed professionally, nervously clutching a small purse. Mrs. Wilson, she said as I approached. I still can't believe you're doing this for me. Rosa, I smiled, unlocking the door. You saved my life. This is the least I can do. As we walked into the bakery together, the smell of fresh bread and sweet pastries filling the air, I realized that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the most unexpected blessings. My son had tried to destroy me, but in doing so, he had led me to someone who would become like a daughter to me. Someone who understood that family isn't just about blood, but about choosing to do what's right, even when it's hard. If you enjoyed this story, please like this video, subscribe to Grandma Stories, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Click the box on the left to hear our next story. Thank you for watching.